Is my screen cool too? Like what
Yeah,
you're
nah, yeah,
seeing
you
in the
good,
front?
you good.
Okay, cool.
All right. What's the word, everybody? It's your boy Trady Gray here, and welcome to another episode of Hunger for More podcast. I have a special guest here with me today, Julian Mitchell, writer, entrepreneur. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I feel good.
How you been holding up during this pandemic?
It's actually been good. I mean, the beginning of it was a little rough in terms of just navigating everything. And I had family that were directly impacted by COVID. I lost an aunt who actually was taking care of her husband. Yeah, thank you. So, she was taking care of her husband, and this was when the testing wasn't as available, and people couldn't really find out. There just wasn't enough information about what was going on at the time. It was very early, and he got really sick. And, these are people that were big in helping me go to college and know what I was going to do with my life. And he got really sick, and she was taking care of him. And then by the time he got his test results back, she had got sick and passed away maybe like a week after that. So that was rough, and having other people in the hospital, things like that. So the early parts of COVID was rough, and then obviously being on lockdown and things like that in the very beginning. But it turned into something very positive, very healthy, focusing on just being healthy and getting back to walking, eating better, writing a lot, focusing a lot. And it just became something that's been really, really positive. So it started a little rough, and it's been really good since then. It's been almost 6 months, bro. It's half the year. So, half of 2020 we've been locked up. So
yeah, eventually, we got to snap back into it some way, somehow, right?
Yep.
Speaking of your writing, I appreciate your 2 new articles you dropped about the Black Lives Matter movement and race. There's a particular thing that you wrote that I wanted to start off with. Where you said the case can be made that desiring racial equality is not about being seen as white people desiring an equal comparison or searching for acceptance into a historically private club, et cetera, but you basically went down to say just like how, black lives, we can control this thing without having to look like them or try to be like them. We can have our own thing. Can you speak on what you were trying to say in that paragraph? That was my favorite, a powerful paragraph that you had in the...
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll start by saying this. Everybody references Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, right? When they talk about equality, they always reference that throughout our history. And I always felt like when people reference equality and they reference the I Have a Dream speech, it's often taken out of context. It's usually understood through the context of us as Black people, especially coming from an oppressed place, saying our desire is to be seen like white people, right? Like our desire is to be seen, respected, compared to, the way that white people are. Like we desire to be like white people, culturally, socially, everything, which in a subconscious way only enforces the idea of white superiority, because ultimately they're saying we're better than you and we're elevated higher than you, and you're saying that you want to become like us. And that's not the basis of what we as Black people ask for, or truly what the basis of what Martin Luther King was saying is about. What it's really about is saying we want to be able to be freely Black people, like completely us in who we are, the diversity and the complexity and the scope of our diaspora, like what we represent, the language we have. We want to be absolutely free to be us, and in a way that's a private identity. If you go to what James Baldwin says, right? Like when he talks about if Black English isn't language, then tell me what is. He talks about how we as Black people should take pride in keeping some sort of private identity, something that's true to us that we keep, that doesn't have to be exploited or given to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because it's very much us. So when we talk about equality, and what I'm saying in that graph is the goal is not to be like white people. Mm-hmm. And it's always made to seem that way. It's like nationalism, like white nationalism, black nationalism. Like, okay, goal is to go to the same colleges and work the same jobs and wear the same clothes and make the same money. It's like, that's not what we're asking for. We're just saying that in our exclusivity, like in who we are as black people, we just want to be able to be free in that and have the same rights and protections and liberties as everybody is supposed to have as people in this country. But that doesn't mean we're all trying to assimilate or be like each other. And I think a big, I don't want to say mistake, but I think a big misstep in our consciousness as we talk about progress is thinking that way. We think like, yo, we need to be people who our barometer of success and value and worthiness is compared to how we see white people define success for us all of these years. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to redefine that for ourselves. And so that's what that graph was really speaking about, is like, yo, if you really pulled the layers back, if you pulled that back, you would see that's not what we're asking for. Like, what we're asking for is saying we are black people and we want to be able to be that without any questions or any persecution. That's it. That's what that was saying.
Like, in your opinion,
that
right?
Makes sense.
In your opinion, like, what do you think is the root of our culture not being able to prosper as a collective economically? Because I know I have an opinion, but I want to hear your opinion first before I say mine.
Yeah, so why we, just to be clear, why we as a black collective can't unite economically or come together
what
and
you
be a
think
power?
like what you think is like the root of our issue that we have as a collective? Because, you know, individually, we're still prospering on the entertainment level, sports level, and also on the business level now also. But as a collective, it still looks like we can't rise up economically.
That, and I talk about that in the story, right? I talk about that. I say we don't see it as the collective. That's our number one problem. It's one thing to say we all need to work together, right? That's a common narrative. We all say, yo, we need to be more united. We need to together. Like, our businesses need to be together. It's not even that as the point, in my opinion. It starts with saying, when we look at, I'm sorry, I hope that wasn't too loud. I got the window open. When we look at the value of black life, this is something I talk about in the story too. Talk about the value of black life. When a black child is born, they're ultimately born and seen as a representation of the value of the black collective. So if you looked at like the stock market, right, and you think about when a company is in the market and there are shares available of that company, right, the value or the cost of those shares represents what a fraction or a representation of what that company is ultimately worth. Mm-hmm. So when we look at our pursuits individually, right, like when we see ourselves as, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be the owner, I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to do all of these things, that still is only incrementally adding to the value of the collective. If you do it yourself, if you look at it like, yeah, I'm the one who is successful and I'm doing these things, that's great for your lineage, but it's not doing a lot to elevate the value of us collectively. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, I don't think we see our individual pursuits through the lens of how is this affecting us collectively. Mm-hmm. It's still very much like every person for themselves. You got to be successful. You got to do this. Secondly, I think it's in the same vein, not understanding the power of real assets and ownership. Think about what impacts the value of a collective, right? If you're using the same thing, what do you own? What are your assets? Mm-hmm. What are the elements that impact how you're perceived, like the value of that? We don't really take into account those things. Like, we don't think about, okay, It's great to make a lot of money, but if you don't actually own anything, then you really don't have any appreciating value over time that's truly going to last throughout generations. So you can make a lot of bread now, and you could be doing all this cool stuff now, but you literally aren't creating the pathway to have real wealth or real assets or any of those things that could create more jobs and more opportunity for people in that respect.
I think it's the same thing Malcolm was trying to say back then, but wasn't trying to say that he did say about. The root of our problem is dependency. You get what I'm saying? Where we can't see. It's like almost like segregation was almost a bad thing now when you look at it. I mean, integration was a bad thing now. Now when you look at it all these years later, because we don't have the same type of independence that we once had before, you know? Where it's like they can throw a dollar sign in our face and all our morals and principles go out the window for a dollar sign. And I think that, I honestly feel that's the main issue that we're having now, of just like collectively, as long as we're all still being, not all of us, but as long as like a good majority of us are being dependent still, we'll never be able to like collectively, cause even now, like not my friend group, but just like people that I know, it's hard for us to, as a group, build something up, because everybody has their own, I guess you could say, their own ideals on how they look at life. You get what I'm saying? And business.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, but we look at people like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, all these people. It's like nobody told them they couldn't make Facebook. Nobody told them they couldn't build Tesla. Nobody told them they couldn't do these things. Even when you look at Kanye, however you feel about him, the fact that he was able to, the impact it had on him is separate. It's all of that is like a personal thing. If you just look pure economically and what he was able to do and build and create, and even the people who have come up under him, all the designers, like you wouldn't have a Fear of God, you wouldn't have so many brands without people who came up under a Kanye West. You know what I'm saying? So if you looked at just that, you would say, why would we be still so dependent on, to your point, so dependent on every industry to be our lifeblood, right? Like, it's not too far-fetched. There was a Negro League at one point. Like, people are able to create these things that we own, is the point. Like, it's not far. We have to stop thinking it's too far-fetched to say we could have our own NBA, or we could build our own Google, or we could make. Vince McMahon made the XFL. He don't even play football.
Exactly.
And they got TV deals and the whole. You get what I'm saying? So it's like
it's almost like
we
branding.
Truly can do it.
It's branding. Like when they see the NBA, they're like, why would I try to make another thing that's not going to compare to the NBA? They're already too big. We can't do it. But
that's the thing. Cool. But look at what you're saying. Think about what you're saying to that point is like, if the NBA is 80% black, and you're the best black players in the world, and you get the best people, you go get a collective of people with money to fund this. Like LeBron just raised $100 million for his media company, right? If you went and raised $500 million, which they could do, and said, we want to create this same way you built the school. And I'm not putting this on LeBron because he does a lot. I'm just saying like him as an example. But you know what I'm saying? Like if they went and did that, then you could go get the other players who would want to be a part of what actually is theirs and they own, that represents them and the culture. You would get more participation and support than you probably would imagine. And I think it's that idea of, if you are that kind of player, right, you only got a certain window to get money. Like you only got a certain window to be that hot. So if somebody has that window, they're not going to go try to create their own. They're going to go try to get all the money and the shine that they can get while they can get it. That's the same reason people still sign deals and don't go independent, because they're like, if all this money is only going to be here for this window of time. But that's like the Jay-Z point where he says, like, are you trying to play for right now? Or are you trying to play for forever? You know? And then bringing it back to, I would say to that, because it's a great point and segue, is Jay-Z, they asked him to the point of collective wealth, right? Economically, they asked him, they said, why wouldn't you go back and buy Marcy projects, right? There's like, why wouldn't you go back and buy up your old projects and change that community and empower the kids economically, et cetera? And his response was, I mean, I could go buy all the buildings, but if their mentality is still the same,
nothing won't change.
Then it's not going to matter. Mm-hmm. But what I would argue to that is, I get the logic behind that, but if you don't change the environment, you don't change the mentality, right? So like, if you don't change the environment of Marcy Projects, if you don't put access and opportunity in those places, then how are people's mentalities going to change? Like, they're still poor, like they're still hurting, they're still doing all of that. So it's like, something has to come first. So the same way that we look at, oh, this is why we shouldn't do this. Like, yo, you got to get out your hood. Like, once you get money, you got to get as far away from this as possible. Or once you do this, it's like, yeah, you can look at it that way, but then your neighborhood and your area is always going to be exactly what it was until white people come and gentrify it, until something happens. And then everybody's it's always going to be that way until somebody decides that it's worth the investment in the future of that place, of the collective. Like, it's better for us all to have something and able to have access and opportunity than just me having it and being selfish with it. Yeah.
I want to, because we short on time, I want to get into a little bit about your backstory, but we can, maybe another time we can talk more about like your upbringing. But I wanted to ask you, like, I read about your story and I know that you come from the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Was there any like,
it's real tough.
Were there any like positive role models that you looked up to from the block, or that, like, who's helped you along your way? Because when you're on the block, most of the time the role models that you look up to, they're encouraging you to self-destruct. You know what I'm saying? So was there any role models around you at that time? Because I heard about your story and how tough it was for you, not having your parents.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you're younger, you don't realize how not normal those circumstances are. So you don't realize that it's not normal for people to be dying. It's not normal for people to be in jail. It's not normal for people to not have food in their refrigerator. It's not normal for neighborhoods to look like this, for there to be bugs everywhere, for you not to have a place to sleep. Like, all these things that you become normalized to, you find ways to exist within it. You know what I'm saying? So there's one part of it where it becomes so normalized that you just navigate it in a way where it's what you know. Like, it's who you know, it's what you know, that's all that it is. So like, when I used to kick it with people in the neighborhood or be around places or be around a lot of different things, it was more so that's just the environment that we were in and what was going on. And I always had friends who, because they saw like, oh, he's like smart, or he's the one that could get out of this situation, they used to be like, yo, if something was about to go down, I had certain friends that'd be like, you need to go home, or you need to get out of here, or like, you need to be making sure you going to school, or you staying out the street, or you're not doing this. So I had like different people in my friend circles that was really like, as we say, in the trenches with shit, like, and they would always be like, yo, stay out the way. Like, you know what I'm saying? You play football, you go to school, like, you do this, like, stay out the way, because that's what I grew up around. Now, people specifically, my brother was a big motivating force. Like, my brother used to always stay on top of me. He was a lot like a father figure. Like, yo, you're not a street dude. Like, I don't care what you see, what's going on. Like, you need to be this way. Like, and he would keep me on that path. Football coaches, like my Pop Warner football coach, Coach Herb, rest in peace, Coach Vern, they were big on me. Like, they pushed me really hard, but they kept me like on the straight and narrow. As I got older, it was people like Will Campbell when I got to college. who became like a mentor to me, who saw things.
Not to cut you off, right?
But yeah.
It's so crazy. That's how much like sports saves young black kids' lives a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because the same thing for me with basketball, like that's not my career now, but just having something where distracted me and made me want to do nothing else was perfect for me to swiggle my way through coming up in the projects and, you know, seeing my friends get 15 plus years and things of that nature. I was able to navigate that because all I wanted to do was play ball. At least until it got me to college, and then I realized, all right, fuck school, I'm leaving this shit. But I wasn't in jail, I wasn't confined.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? And just like, I hear a lot of people sometimes where they'll say, I don't want my kids playing sports. And I'm just like, whoa, like, no way.
Yeah, they don't get it. They don't get it, bro.
I'm like, yo, I don't care. Let your child, girl or boy, be in activities that takes them away from nonsense. Because, man, I probably would never even finish high school if I didn't have basketball.
Man, and that was like, it was bigger than sports, bro. That was community, it's family, that was culture. Like, for people like us who didn't have family, your football coaches were your family. Like, the players, they was like your brothers, your cousins, you grew up with them. You went and had football practice or basketball practice at the neighborhood gym. Like in Vegas, it was like Doolittle was in the middle of the West Side in the neighborhood, like late night hoops. Everybody went there and played, but that's also where all the teams pressed. And like, that's where all that was like in the neighborhood where all the drug dealers was at, all the gang members was at, everybody was there. But at the same time, all the kids that played Pop Warner and played basketball and high school basketball, that's where everybody practiced at. That's where everybody was. So you had the drill teams and the parents used to come out and cook, and the drum lines and the cheerleaders, and you know, the lights used to come up. So it was like a culture and a community to that we never felt at our actual homes. You know what I'm saying? So when we came into that, it was a lot different.
The coolest thing was about like playing basketball or any sport is that we got to travel. We got to like go other places, and then you learn discipline and teamwork and all the essential things that I feel that every young kid should learn in life, you know, that you can take with you to do other things. So I think sports is just, I just wanted to say that because your story kind of similar of just like how a sport can just like save you to bypass time from doing other things. You know what I'm saying?
My God. Yeah. And the thing about that was, anybody who, when you look at these stories of people who came from those environments and played sports and reached a high level, right? They always talk about how the sport was their refuge, like their sanctuary. And that's very true, because when in those spaces, nothing in your world matters, right? Like nothing else and you find a way to channel that through whatever sport you're playing. And people see that. And I think that's the same thing people see when they try to steer you away from it. You know what I'm saying? They look at you and they say, yo, this energy can go one of two ways. You know what I'm saying? It can either go really left or it can go right. And so when people recognize that in you and they see that you have some hope, because a lot of people I came up around didn't have that, you know, they had potential, but they didn't have the hope. You could see it in them. It was like, yo, their energy is already over here. So if they could see that in you, they would try to cultivate that through sport. They'd be like, yo, we're going to push you harder, try to get you to work harder. We're going to get you to try to understand these principles, the values of sports. You know what I'm saying? Like discipline and respect and teamwork, these things that carry over into your life. So when you talk about kids playing sports, sometimes sport is the only way you can harness that energy from going very left. You know what I'm saying? A lot of cats I played sports with growing up who their energy was different. You know, they are dead. They've, you know, been in jail, or they got, you know, their lives is completely different. So, and then when I see them at times now, they be so proud because they know we came from the same place. Like they literally know, like, yo, we came from the same place. You know what I'm saying? So it's so critical. Sport is critical to life. You know what I'm saying? When you come from those neighborhoods, for sure.
All right. I want to talk about Because you went to
and salute to you for coming out of that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For being able to
and
elevate yourself.
When you're in it, you don't even realize what's happening. But like when you stop and you check out the landscape around you, you're just like, whoa, I'm glad I'm not playing basketball anymore, but I'm glad I did, because if I didn't, I would have been outside with my friends and shootouts.
Can I
and
actually
everything.
ask you a question too? Can I ask you a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Where you sit now, right? Coming from where you come from, at what point did you realize that how you grew up wasn't normal?
I'll be honest. I realized that when I started having girlfriends. For me, it's been real interesting. Like, I learned most of everything from women, from all the girls that I've been with.
Same.
When I see like my certain toxic behavior I done had, where I learned like, oh shit, I learned this from either seeing my father do it or seeing my friends do it, so it was normal. Like, even trying to, you know, when you're young and insecure, it's just like you don't want your girlfriend to do this, you don't want to do that, or sometimes you're too aggressive. Like, even like the whole Vado thing that's viral right now, or just like him grabbing Tahiri. I'm like, wow, at 15, I probably would have did that at 15. You know what I'm saying? Just because I'm just filled with ego. I'm just like, man, and this is from things that I've seen, so it was normal to me. You get what I'm saying? Until I started, if it wasn't for dealing with women, I would have never knew like a lot of things that I had to basically reprogram myself to not have an ego, to be more calm and kinder. You know what I'm saying? Of us, everything doesn't have to be aggressive all the time. Even me speaking to you right now would have never happened 5 years ago, because I was stuck in a way of just like, fuck everybody, or I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm from New York, so it's just like, everything's just like, yo, fuck everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm better than everybody. But it's just like, now I see things of like, yo, building relationships. I'm doing this not even for money. It's just about trying to get as much knowledge as I can from people that I truly respect. And there's nothing wrong with me asking. Because I would have never asked before a couple years ago because of the programming. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah, that's powerful for sure.
Yeah, man.
Because it changes your life. That shit changes your whole life.
Shout out to.
Because I feel like part of it too is we don't know what it's like not to be fighting something. Like, as Black people, we don't know what it's. We don't actually give ourselves permission to feel free. And that's a part of it. And I'm not saying that's our fault, again, because we are put in scenarios normally where we have to. It's like they say, survival, right? Survival is a war tactic. That's saying like, yo, we're at war, so we have to survive the war. Like, we can't die. But then at the same time, that builds up a certain instinct that everything is a fight. So like that same ego you have, you need that, because you can't allow somebody to take advantage of you or play you or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
it's so funny.
You don't know how to coexist in the world as a human being. You're always a soldier. Like, you're always at war. I think that's a big part of why collectively we also aren't able to elevate, is because we always are fighting something. You know what I'm saying? Always.
Man.
Yeah.
Ego is something that I've been practicing for like the last year and a half, and just like stoicism. You know, I read a lot of books by Ryan Holiday. I read all his books actually, and just ego is the enemy, the obstacle is the way, and just realizing that like, whoa, a lot of things that's in my way is mainly because of me. Like, a lot of things be self-inflicted obstacles that I put upon myself. Like, you know, so I'm glad you said the ego thing, but just to speed up, you graduate college and then you started a digital agency, right? Or how did that story go?
So I was in college. It's like 2009, and I went to Occidental. I was in LA, and I had a mentor who I mentioned, Will Campbell, at the time. So Will was an Oxy alumni. He's somebody who saw me hustling all through college.
What was your hustles in college?
In music, working at the radio. Oh my God, I did everything. I was the event producer. I used to throw the events on campus. I used to throw the concerts at other campuses. I ran the radio station. I was an editor at the paper.
And what's your purpose when you're doing all of this? Like, what you trying to get out of this, of like doing all these things?
At the time, it's a great question that you asked, because literally I reference this all the time. Mm-hmm. When I was doing it, I was just, as I call it, powered by passion, right? I was just more so, these are all things that I like, mm-hmm. and really things that I love that I don't see. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, I would see the radio station. I'm like, we don't have any music that I fuck with. So like, I need to make that happen. Yo, we got all this money and we ain't throwing concerts that, like, I know motherfuckers like to say music I don't see it. So I want to go do it. Yo, people ain't talking about this. I want to write that story. Yo, we ain't having these conversations. I want to do it. So I was fueled by that, right? Like creating and expressing myself because I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know what it meant. Like I was doing it all, but I didn't know what it meant. And the funny thing is, Will is actually somebody who was like, yo, you know, all the stuff that you're doing is really like a career. So like, these are things that people do for a living. Like they do these things. I was like, okay. And then I started to realize the power in what I was feeling, which was the purpose that I still carry now. Mm-hmm. Taking my unique perspective and my multitude of talents to translate that perspective and doing it to create spaces that don't exist or have conversations that don't exist or to add a value that doesn't exist.
Is that why like you started like Get Paid to Be Yourself and Complex? I heard you're responsible for Complex Hustle. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I'm
so
like,
the first thing, I'll give you a quick frame. So out of college, I was like, yo, I want to do the media thing. I hadn't done it really. I used to see people in corner offices in New York. You know, that was the vibe. Like if he was a magazine editor, that's where he was at. Mm-hmm. So I booked a plane ticket on a whim, moved to New York. I took over this blog at the time. It's called Multitude New York. Multitude was like a kind of buzzing little streetwear skater brand in the city, mm-hmm. like in the East Village and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like down there in Brooklyn. And so they needed a marketing intern. I said, yo, I'll be your marketing intern for free if you let me run this online magazine. So I took that over, got a homie to redesign it, and I went around myself and did all the features and like built up this blog. And when I built up the blog, I did a lot of people's first features. Like I did the first feature on like Warby Parker and like all these different people. And I was writing this stuff in 2009, like early, 2009. And I did all of that and was like, okay, I can do this. So then I moved back to LA, and the fast track is moved back to LA. Will was like, yo, I have this idea for an agency, for a company. And that idea became Quantity. He used to have a company, Arc Media Group, that built websites. So him and I linked up, like wrote the mission statement, the value system, like everything for this company, and built it out. So I started in advertising. Mm-hmm. It was a small group of us, built up Quantity, and then went from Quantity to joining Puff to build and launch Revolt. Wait, one of the first people there.
Wait, before you even go to the Revolt thing, with Quantity, it was you guys' mission statement was that you guys were an intersection of media, marketing, tech, and culture, right? So from the inside, like how was the operation of the company every day, huh?
So I was a part of writing that. Yeah, quantum metrics. Yeah. So at the time, remember, this is really early. Like this is before advertising took the big culture shift. This is like the blog era. So being in advertising wasn't sexy. Like being in the marketing industry was not as fly and cultural as it is today. Mm-hmm. So at that particular time, our biggest job and the way that it carried out every day was trying to teach brands about culture and the shift that was happening while actively getting them to participate in it. So much of our job and my specific was actually literally creating presentations and strategies and decks that were like, yo, here's what's happening. Here's the future of what's happening. Here's how you play in that. And we'll build what you need to go do that. And that turned into...
How come you knew what was next? Like, that, as I'm reading up about you, I'm like, yo, how did he know, like, what was next? That was coming, which was content. You know, like,
Yeah.
what did you see at that time that showed you like, oh shit, like the old way is not cool anymore. It's going towards content.
Well, what I saw was social media would not be social without conversations. Nothing is social without conversations. So then you look at how do conversations happen, right? Like conversations there's two fundamental things that always remain. Number one is that subcultures fuel pop culture. So a subculture is something that's happening below the surface that eventually will get adopted by people who are lit, and then it becomes something that's mainstream. That's always the formula forever. Then you look at it and you say, conversations fuel culture. Content fuels conversations. So then you say, if content fuels conversations, conversations fuel culture, then how are people having conversations and what conversations matter to people, right? Like you look at that, okay, boom. At the time, social media was just, and digital in general was just kind of becoming the thing. Blogging happened. This is what I noticed. Blogging happened because media got to a place where it wasn't allowing people who had true perspectives on culture or on lifestyle or on music to be able to express that without getting into the club, right? Like they had to get into the industry. But they had a perspective that was more valuable than what a lot of people were offering, or they were giving something that was very unique to what they had. So they went and democratized it and built it on their own. They went and did that. They took that audience. They built an audience for themselves. That became a wave. That became subculture. That became pop culture. You remember the blogging era? Everybody had a blog. Like if you was popping, you had a blog. You know? So like I started seeing stuff like that, like the cycle, like how these things work, like what the shifts are that happen. And when I would see it, because I was a part of it, like I was always a part of the culture while like being a student of it, I would always be like, oh, okay. It became instinctual in some ways. I'd be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I know this is going to happen because I know how this works. Like I know hip hop, so I know that shift. I know media, I know this. So you can kind of see the formula. You develop like a formula. It becomes instinctual of how these things usually play out. And then I would just go for it. I'd be like, okay, if I see this and I recognize this, instead of just saying it like a theory, I'd rather go create it, like go do it and show you like, all right, this is happening. So I'm gonna go, you know, do this. And then that would happen. And so it went from starting out, like while I was at Quantity, it was, you know, doing everything from Accelerate by Google, like creating that platform to done by Wells Fargo. And when I say Accelerate by Google, like that actual strategy and platform for that product, I wrote that. So then the like working on the done the campaign for Wells Fargo and the whole idea around mobile banking and millennial banking for Wells Fargo, to Best Yourself for Honda and getting Honda to do a media brand like access.honda.com, and that being their most successful campaign since like Civic Nation, and doing like when Dwayne Wade came to this and doing his first Way of Wade platform, which was editorial, and Magic Johnson and like all these people. And I was doing all of that with this and teaching these brands about like, yo, this is the intersection of media, culture, etc.
In that time,
what do you say?
I said in that time, right? Like, how is life for you at that moment as you're working on all these things, like personal life wise? Like, is there like pressure, or you're in a zone that like you're ignoring everything going on around you just to get everything done?
I'll give you the snapshot. Number one, it was intense because when I started there, number one, I never went advertising. I always wanted to be in the music business in terms of before that. So I never really saw a career in marketing and advertising. So I had no foresight of like, oh, this is the career path that I want to go down. So there was like that shock. Two, I was broke as shit. So at that particular time, when I was jumping into that, I wasn't really making any money. So there was that part of it. It wasn't until down the road that I really started making money. But at the time, I wasn't. 3, I was about to be a father. So I was about to have a son. Yeah. So then there was that point of time. And then the fourth part of it is we were building a company. So then I'm super young. I'm an executive, a director in this company that's new, that's building in an industry that I'm not familiar with, and I didn't really see a future in. I'm about to be a father. I'm not really getting no bread. I just moved from New York. Like, all this stuff is happening. So personally at the time, it was a lot. It was like, okay, what's going on? Now, at the same time, I looked at it like, if I can master the game, like if I can really learn the mechanics of how the game works, then I'll be a star in any industry. Because I started to see that. My professor in college told me, he was like, yo, I know you probably want to do all these other things, because I was telling him about politics, etc. But he was like, if you can master the ability to translate your ideas and communicate, there is no industry you are not going to conquer. He told me that in college. And that always with me, because I was like, oh, the intangible things that we talk about, that goes with you. Like, as long as you evolve and develop, that goes with you. But if you can learn the mechanics of how the games work, like how the industries work and the things that are transferable, then you can move across spaces and boss up. And so I became committed to mastering the game, like being a student of the game. And so I remember being in meetings at the time when I first started sweating bullets, because I'm in these big meetings with these ad executives and like agency people, and I'm the youngest dude, and I got ideas and stuff, and I'm like rambling and like, you know what I'm saying? I'm nervous, but I kept saying in my mind, I was like, yo, you got to take the shot. Like if you want to do it, you got to take the shot. I kept just pushing myself. And so that was more my mentality, was like, you're uncomfortable, but on the other side of all of this is going to be a whole new level of your life, yourself, of what you're doing. That'll propel you, and that's how it happened. It changed after that.
What did you learn about yourself during that transition from, not having anything and having all this pressure to like finally breaking through? Because when was the breakthrough for you personally? Was it when you went to Revolt, or sometime after that?
I think Revolt was a professional breakthrough. I think for a lot of reasons. I feel like the personal breakthrough was the personal breakthrough happened while I was working in advertising at Quantity, like in that period of time. And it came a little bit before that. It came at a point where I was at a rock bottom. Like, I'm from New York. I was working a job. The job fell through. I was at this kind of breaking point. And I had this moment of like really digging inside of myself, like looking in the mirror and saying, yo, if this is a defining moment for you type thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you choose not to quit, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you choose not to quit, no matter how hard it gets, then there's nothing that you've been promised that you won't get. Like, there's nothing you see that you won't be able to accomplish. And I made a commitment in that moment to say, I am going as hard as I need to go, and I don't care how hard it gets. And so that was a personal breakthrough. Can you talk about how important that is to like make a commitment that no matter what, I'm going to get through this and get to the other side? Because a lot of people, I feel, is never really committed. You get what I'm saying? So can you speak about that? Like, just making the decision mentally that things are going to get harder, no matter how hard it gets. I'm not stopping. I have a phrase that I've developed for myself that I share a lot, and it's action kills anxiety. I feel like
I wrote a tweet today about something like
that. Fear is giving yourself too much time to think. You get what I'm saying? A lot of times. And I feel like part of commitment is trust. And like it's rooted in that. And to commit to yourself means you are trusting yourself. Mm-hmm. To trust yourself means you are going to commit to yourself, good, bad, or indifferent. Like you're allowing yourself to make a decision and you're giving yourself permission to fail, but you're also giving yourself permission not to fail. Mm-hmm. But whatever the case may be, you're riding for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm riding for me. And I feel like that changes everything because the more you do it, it's like a muscle. Mm-hmm. Like committing to yourself is a muscle that you have to work and work and work. Like in moments where you be feeling like, I don't know, mm-hmm. you literally got to be like, fuck it. Like go. And the more that you do that and the more that you build up that muscle of like, yo, I'm really riding for myself. Like I'm down to ride for myself. They start to build up a level of certainty in yourself, not being right or wrong, but you develop this level of certainty where you're like, okay, I may not always be right, or I may not always be making the smartest decision to other people's standards, but what I am going to do is make the decision that is absolutely true to me. Like it is absolutely true to me, and it is absolutely what I feel, and I will stand on that. Like I will stand on that, I will ride on it. And I feel like that's paramount to anything you do, because if you don't have that commitment, like if you aren't that decisive, mm-hmm. then you will never truly be able to honor yourself in moments that you're the only person. Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm getting FaceTime. You will not be able to honor yourself in the moments where you need yourself the most, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll have moments where it may be just you and you're riding for yourself. And if you don't have that to say, I'm completely confident in my decision, then you won't be able to represent yourself. You'll get to, you know what I'm saying? Like you won't be able to do that. And you won't really know what you want. So I think that commitment and saying, yo, no matter what, I'm not going to quit. That's the marathon. That's literally the marathon. It's saying,
action beats anxiety. It's funny that
action kills anxiety. Facts.
I love that because today I literally tweeted, because I have a thing where as I'm doing these interviews, like before the interview, I get nervous. Like days before, mm-hmm. I get nervous. But I said something today on my tweets. I was just like, preparation eliminates fear for me. Because when I'm prepared, even if I wrote 1,000 questions right here, I won't get through all of them. But just knowing that I was prepared, I come to this with confidence. You get what I'm saying? I'm not like, what do I say? How did this go? I know it's going to go all over the place, but I have a plan. And as long as I have my plan, no matter how things get crazy, I'm sticking to the plan, and I can pivot through the plan. You get what I'm saying? So I love that you said that action beats anxiety. Yeah. That's real shit.
It's a fact. It's a fact.
Feel me? So
that to me has been one of the most powerful things, like in terms of building confidence, building security in yourself, building trust in yourself. It comes over taking the shots. That's really all it is. Like you're not gonna have confidence in your jump shot if you're not shooting every day in the gym.
Not putting up them reps. That's for sure.
Yeah, so you got to do it, and you can't be afraid to airball, to brick, to shoot it off the backboard every now and then, like to get booed off the court, whatever it is. But eventually, you will get to a place where you find like what's for you, and you're completely okay with that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
And speaking of preparation, so you end up leaving quantity. That's what's called quantity.
Quantity. Yep.
Quantity, and then you end up with Revolt. And I listened to your story.
Hold on 1 second.
It's all good.
I have to tell you. Hold on. Okay, we're good. Sorry, I was getting a call. Keep getting the phone.
No, it's all good.
It's good enough.
So yeah, I know that you end up at Revolt because I watched your interview with John Henry, which I like. Yeah. I like John Henry a lot also, and you're responsible for Revolt's launch. But what was more impressive to me that I caught, I was like, what the fuck? when you was like how you had the first 500 tweets ready to go, and I'm just like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
So there's a whole preparation to this launch. Can you explain what you and the Revolt team did during that time to prepare for the Revolt launch? Like, that's details. I want the details because, like, for other media companies that want to start, I just want to know, because maybe one day I want to start one. You know what I'm saying? And I want to know like what's the full preparation to this launch.
It took shout out to Neil Dominique, shout out to Ramon Duke, shout out to Besadonna, shout out to Chris Roy, Video Chris. There was a small team of us, like a small team of us that were really like in it. To Tuma Bassa, like shout out to Tuma. That like before there were offices and trash cans and phones and all of that, like it really like us building this out, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So what went into it to try to keep it as short as possible with the details is like Puff gets the deal, him and Andy Schoen, they get Revolt. They have it as a network. I think the announcement had just came out not too long before. So I get an email from the head of digital at the time. And he was like, yo, we're launching this network. Would love to meet with you. We know what you do in this space. And then that ended up being like, yo, Mr. Combs really wants to meet with you. And he wants to meet with you like tomorrow morning. And then it's like, okay. So then it went from the meeting with him, and I remember, I'll tell you this. I remember I had a meeting with Andy Schoen the day before that, and I remember the conversation that I had, and they kept telling me, they was like, this is the first network that's launching in the social media era, right? Like that kept being the thing they would say. This is the first network that's launching in the social media era. And the reason why they wanted to talk to me is because I was one of the people who understood very well, like that space, like the intersection of social, editorial, media, culture, like that was my world. Like I've been doing that with brands and doing the whole thing. So there was like, yo, he wants somebody young. He doesn't want an old executive. He doesn't want a TV, but like he wants somebody who's in the culture, he gets his, whatever. Mm-hmm. So when I had the meeting, and they said, yo, he wants to meet with you in the morning. No lie. I took the cues from that, like what they kept saying he was looking for. And I went to a cafe in downtown LA and I stayed up all night. The meeting was at probably like 8 in the morning, literally 8, 9 in the morning. Stayed up all night and I made this presentation that was all about answering the questions that they said he needed answers to. Wow. And I was like, so it was like the best practices of social media to, content driving culture and driving conversations and conversation. All the stuff we're talking about, subcultures fueling pop culture. And I even was like, the voice of Revolt should be this, and it should be positioned like this, and it should be this, this, and this. And I went to FedEx, I had laminated and bound and like put on hard stock gloss and a whole nine. And when I went there and met with him, it was just him and I. And when I was there and we were talking and we sit down, he was telling me, he's like, so this is like my baby. This means a lot to me. Like this network is huge to me. And while we were talking, it eventually came down to like, so he asked me the questions that I thought he was going to ask. And then he followed that up by saying like, what do you see? Like, what do you see, Lopez? What do you want? And literally, I was like, well,
there you go.
And I had 2 copies, and I had one for him, and I had one for me, and I literally walked him through the whole thing. And he was like, yo. And then I was showing, we were going through videos and interviews like James Baldwin, Stokely Carmichael, and like all this stuff. And we were there the whole time. And when I left, he was like, yo, this like is exactly like I needed. This is exactly what I was looking for. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm young and I'm black and I'm like of the culture and all of that. So I was getting ready to go to South by Southwest and I got the job. When I left his house in the car, I got the job that day. But then to fast forward to what we did is after I got the job, I come into the office. It's like the first part of coming in, and I was the director of social media. I was director of social media, and then became the head of editorial. So I was running editorial and social media when we launched it. Yo, he called me and my team to fly to New York. That same week. Was like, yo, I need y'all here. Quick story. I go home, pack a bag. We get car, go to the plane, fly to New York, get out the plane to New York, got a car, dropped my stuff at the hotel, went straight across the street to 1510 to the old office, go up to the 6th floor where his office was, come out. I'm talking about we fresh off the plane, fresh from LA, come out of here on his floor, and he has the conference room full of people, like full of people. Come in the room, everybody's clapping. He's doing like an introduction. It's like, hey, whatever. And it was like a war room for Revolt. And I'm talking about, it was all kinds of people in there. And he was like, all right, this is Julian. He's our new director of social media. You know, he was like, yo, he got this plan about how this should look and how this should feel. Like he got this. And they had my deck. The presentation I showed him, they had it on the screens. Wow. It was on the screens. And it was like printed out. And that started, the point of it is that started, I was in New York for weeks. I didn't go home, and I got a newborn baby. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I was in New York, and it was getting the designs, getting that. Shout out to Jelani. I sat with Jelani and talked to him about all the designs, like the first mock-ups of the website, the first ads, like what they look like. We did the Revolt value pyramid, which is the values of the network.
When I listened to you on John Henry's podcast and you were saying these things, I'm just like, oh shit, it was a
real deal.
He was really in it, and that had me intrigued. I'm like, yo, I need to hear this whole story.
Completely in it. Yo, man, listen. Literally the mission statement, the positioning statement, the manifesto, the value system, the first 500 tweets, all that stuff is very real. I still have the documents, the strategy, the state of music strategy that we ended up launching the channel with, the mock-ups of the Tumblr pages, everything you could think of. And I remember presenting Puff all of it, literally having to walk him through every single thing and getting his approval on every single thing and getting him. We had meetings at his apartment, in his car, in elevators, in office, at everywhere, bro. We I remember one time I was presenting something to him as he was coming down the elevator, walking across the street. Literally, we're coming out the elevator, walking across the street, having a meeting. I'm taking him through stuff while he's getting ready to go to dinner. It was all the time. Staying up all night in the back room.
Was there a certain time he wanted to launch? That's why things were getting hectic? Was there a certain deadline?
Yeah. You know what's so crazy is, so we did all of that preparation, right? It was a ton of preparation. And Revolt was supposed to launch literally the day of the Boston bombing. You remember the Boston Marathon launch? We were set to launch that day.
Oh, wow.
And we were all set to go for that. And then when the Boston bombing happened, we were all in the office when it happened. Mm-hmm. And the day that happened, everything changed. Then it was okay, we have to rethink this. We have to, take a different approach. So then we ended up launching after that. But initially we had a date in mind and we were working aggressively towards that date. And and I remember walking to the train and the sun's coming up and, the whole nine.
What was that day like launch day? What was launch day like, the first day of launch?
First, it's funny, first day of launch, I still got videos. I'm going to forward you the Instagram video from the day we launched.
Yeah, please do. Definitely. I want to see
up. I did not sleep for 2 days. No lie, 2 days. Damn. Did not sleep. And the day that we launched and rolled everything out, by the end of the day, I fell asleep for the whole day. I slept a whole day. Yeah, like launch day was crazy. Like we
like
launched because the day we launched, like Puff was on, Mr. Combs was on all the radio stations. Like he did Breakfast Club, he did
felt like Bad Boy all over.
You know,
again.
6 a.m. He did all that.
Everywhere.
There was like all the articles coming out. Yeah, it was, you know what I'm saying? Like all that stuff. So, and I was up through all of that. Like up in the office by myself because we had to run that. So what were we talking about on the Twitter? We had to launch the Twitter, like all of that.
I can't get over the 500
and
tweets.
I was over that, yeah.
I still can't get over that you wrote 500 tweets before launch day. That is crazy.
It was a lot. It was hundreds of tweets. Like it was. These are factual statements, and they had to be in schedules, like in calendar schedules. Wow. They had to get approved. There was a thing where when we first started, he had to approve everything. Mm-hmm. Like the night before, we would be on big chains with all the content, all the stuff that was rolling out, and we would have to see it every bit. So
is Diddy management style still aggressive, or like how he was when he was building Bad Boy, or is it different? Was it different at that time?
I mean, I wasn't around when he was building Bad Boy. I've heard stories and things like that, so I can't really speak to what he was like back then. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is when we were building Revolt, it was for real. Like I'll tell you, when the deal happened, who all was in that room with me then too? Rest in peace to Andre Harrell. He was there. I know Neil was there for sure. He went to Cannes, France, and we were launching the channel, like the network, because we did social first the first year, then we launched the channel.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
And while that was happening, people didn't even know that. They thought Revolt was like straight digital. Mm-hmm. And the team did a really, really great job of launching the network. Like when we launched, it was really, really on point. Mm-hmm. So then the network came and it was launching, and you know, he was saying, like, we had a meeting and he was like, you know, this is history because, you know, no black man of the culture like this owns a network. Like, nobody owns a network in this time, in this moment. And he was talking about the magnitude of that. And everybody didn't understand what he was saying and, like, the magnitude of it. So he says, he's like, yo, I need the plan for how we're rolling this out. And the plan that came back wasn't big enough. Like, he was really about, like, yo, this needs to feel like the magnitude of the moment. Mm-hmm. And so, I kid you not, he was like, all right. He was like, I guarantee you by the time I come back from Cannes, this is going to be considered the biggest TV launch in history. He literally said that. He's like, this is going to be the biggest TV launch in history. And he goes to Cannes, and we were in the conference room. He's like, yo, keep this screen on, keep this TV on, and everybody staying in here. It was like a war room. And he goes to France, and we stayed up the entire time he was in this. We stayed in that room, and dog, we were on a live stream, and he would go do a talk, and then he would do an interview, and then he would check in like, yo, where we at? Like, what our tweets looking like? What's our plan? What's our editorial story? Who's talking about this? Then he'd go do something, be up all night, then he'd check it, and it was round the clock. And he was hitting everybody like you could think of and doing interviews with everybody. And I kid you not, Bloomberg put out a story that said it was the biggest launch in one of the biggest launches in TV history. I'll never forget. And he did what he said he was going to do, and then he put the picture of him on the table, like pouring champagne in France. And that's just how his energy was at that time, to give you an idea. Like, he was relentless. It was like, yo, if I got to put this on my back, if I got to make every phone call, whatever I got to do, I'm doing it. Like, this is big, and it's mine, and like, I'm doing it. And if you were around at that time, you carried that energy, like you picked up on that for sure.
Diddy's really a savage. When it comes to
it's intense.
There's only a few ways to communicate a message, and you chose writing mainly as yours. What made you decide that writing was the tool that you would use to get your message across?
I don't really think it was a decision as much as it was an outlet. You know, I felt like even when I was in high school, I used to go to this youth forum, the Las Vegas Youth Forum, and they would have the sessions, and the person who would kind of lead the sessions, they would ask you, like, do you want to write to recap the session? They would pick you to write it for the Review Journal, the city's paper. And I would get picked to write it because I'd be in the sessions talking about the different things that we should do. So writing was always like an outlet and a tool for me. And I think as I got older and I started writing across mediums, like writing for advertising, brand writing, editorial, etc., I started realizing that it was really a tool. Like I could really translate whatever, like what my advisors, I could do whatever. And it wasn't until from a journalism standpoint, because I was always writing, journalism in terms of doing that came while I was at Revolt, because when I was a social media director, again, conversations. So every day I would be like, yo, what happened and what are we talking about? And that's part of what made us so big on the timeline is like we would change our Twitter name, change our skins, like change our profile photo. We would like lead whatever conversation was happening around music and culture. So that was an everyday thing. So when we would do that, I would be like, yo, we should be talking about this. And people used to be like, yeah, we should, but nobody could write it or people wouldn't do it. So I started doing it myself. So like when big moments would happen, I would write the story myself and be like, all right, well, let's publish this. And then that story would like really go crazy. Or I'd go do the interviews. Like I'd go interview somebody, like interview The Dream or interview whoever. And then nobody would write the story that went with the video. Like we'd put the video out, it'd go crazy. And so I was like, all right, I'll write the stories that go with my interviews, that go with the videos. Or we'd go out and cover all the festivals and stuff like that.
I'm glad you
and I was
just
like,
said
we
that.
need to cover these.
I'm glad you just said that.
So I started doing it.
When you say nobody wasn't writing the stories to the video interview, what's the decision behind that? Because even I've been thinking about doing that at times. Like, should I write stories to like every interview that I do just to like build that muscle?
Yeah.
Like what?
You should.
What's the reason for that? Or why?
I think number one, everything needs context. We always talk about content is king. I think context is king. I think you need to give context to what people are seeing, hearing, reading, or watching. So I think it was always about context, right? Like people need to understand why what he's saying is important or what she's saying is important. People need to know what it means. People need to know, instead of just putting it out there and leaving it to people's interpretation. I think you kind of want to steer people, you know what I'm saying? Number two, I think you want to give your perspective. So if you do an interview or you shoot a video, you also want to give your take on what that was or what that experience was. That was two, like sharing perspective. And then I think the third one is simply content, like media, like multimedia. People experience content in different ways. Some people like the written word, some people like to watch, some people like social media. So I always looked at it like whatever way somebody wants to experience this, they should be able to experience it at the highest quality.
That makes
You know what I'm saying? So that was always my approach to that.
Now, where does Forbes come into play in your career? Because I feel like that's where I mainly knew you for at first. I just loved your articles as a reader because I read a lot. So I knew you from there. The first time I ever seen you was kind of late. I seen you like around 2017 when you did the Get Paid to Be Yourself with Dame, which is one of my favorite interviews. And then from there, I'm just like, who's Julian Mitchell? Then I just started looking at your work, and I'm just like, oh, he talking about the stuff I'm into. And that's how I became a fan, you know what I'm saying? Because it comes a time where it's just like, you're talking about things deeper than just music. You're talking about the business side of music, you get what I'm saying? And I'm a big fan of that as just a business nerd. So it's just like, you was perfect for at that time, and you look like me, so it was perfect, you know what I'm saying? So how did you end up becoming a columnist for Forbes?
You know, it's funny. It was Zach Greenberg. So when you said that, yeah. So bringing it full circle, when I was at Revolt in the beginning, Zach wrote a story. He came to LA and interviewed me for a story that was like meet Diddy's real Revolt recruits, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a story of people who were launching the network, and he interviewed some of us. And he came to LA to do that, and that's where we met. And then, like, he saw what we were doing and what I was doing there, and, like, I was young. Like, at the time, I was even younger than I am now. Obviously, like, that was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of, like, similarly kind of like, oh, like, you know, he started to understand my background more. He saw the relationship that I had, mm-hmm. like, with Puff at the time and what was going on. He's kind of like, oh, okay. Like, you know, and over time, I started writing. So when I was writing about music and culture and all that while I was at Revolt, I personally, coming from advertising, going into television and media, I saw a lot of things that I didn't feel like people noticed. And I saw a lot of things that I felt like people like us needed perspective on, whether it was how to move, whether it was how to know our value in these spaces, whether it was knowing what's happening in the business and how to understand it. You know what I'm saying? All this stuff I was seeing. So I just started publishing it on my LinkedIn. Now, this is before LinkedIn was even like a publishing platform. Mm-hmm. I started writing it on my LinkedIn and sharing it out. And I remember I wrote this story, Grind versus Hustle, a guide to telling the difference. I wrote this like about the difference between people who grind and people who hustle. And it was like something people were like, yo, this is like hard. This is so on point. And Zach was one of those people who hit me up like, yo, this is an amazing article, like an amazing story. And he was like, how would you feel writing more stories like this? He's like, we don't have this perspective at all on our platform. Like it doesn't exist. We don't have people talking about the business. And at the time, they really didn't have a showbiz vertical like music, media, entertainment. It really was non-existent outside of Cash King's list and who's the richest this and who's that. Mm-hmm. They definitely didn't have any culture writers. There was nobody writing about culture. There's nobody writing about creators. There's nobody writing about none of that. Mm-hmm. And I saw it as, oh, this is a huge opportunity again to create a space on a platform like this that literally did not exist before. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't have a voice on that platform before I was writing there. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, it just didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay. Who would you have went to Forbes and read before I got there for that?
I wasn't even looking at, like, you know about Forbes, but I'm not even looking at Forbes to read anything over there.
Exactly. So when he said that, I was writing a story for Revolt on Kendrick, on To Pimp a Butterfly. And so I was writing this story and I was like, oh, let me talk about how this story is changing advertising. So literally the first story I published was a story about how Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly proved that a challenging narrative is profitable. I never got to read that one. I'm challenging narrative is more profitable. And I sent it to him. Mm-hmm. So I write it and I sent it to him and I had an outline of what I wanted to call him to be. I called it the code. And I was like translating, the mechanics of music, media, entertainment, something like that. And I sent it to him and I had the stories down and he like, okay, he's not playing type thing. Like he's ready. He wrote this. This is like dope. And they published it. That was my first story. And then it was on from there. And then I did 2 years under music, media, entertainment. And then I received the opportunity to go to entrepreneurs. And then there really was nobody like me writing under entrepreneurs. So one thing to do music, media, entertainment, that can be considered like typical when somebody sees me. Like, yeah, of course he covers music and he comes from music. But when I started writing about the business, like for real, that just like opened it wide open. He was like, wow, I was writing about everything. Bitcoin, digital health, the future of everything. And and so that's just kind of how that happened. And it lasted 4 years, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so you're not there anymore?
No. That was like 20, February 2019.
Yeah, I had it written down.
Or last February.
Because I seen like, I think like your last article was like, I think it came out like January 2019 or something of that nature. I'm like, damn, he have a real head in a while.
Yeah, I left February 2019 was 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I started 2015.
All right. I have a few more questions because what intrigues me.
Yeah, and I gotta jump off in like 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes. All right,
Sure.
All right, let me get one more question in that I really care about. You talk about vertical.
I respect it.
You talk about vertical integration a lot.
A lot.
You know, and that's literally my favorite like topic to talk about in business. And you see what happened with Nick Cannon, which I think is the consequences of not being vertically integrated, you know? So can you talk about, if you have an opinion about what happened in Nick Cannon, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think what Nick Cannon has done, you can feel however you want about him. You can say, oh, he's corny or he's not this or he's not that. But what Nick Cannon is a successful entrepreneur and a young black businessman. And he's done his thing, and he's done it longer than a lot of people who've been able to do it at a high level. So first of all, I respect Nick Cannon. And I think that, he's done a lot to get to where he is, and he's built his career, and his longevity is impressive. So first, in terms of seeing him, that's the context. Like, do I think everything he's done is dope? Do I think everything he's done is my to whatever? No, but that doesn't knock the respect that I have for him as a businessman, entertainer, etc. With that being said, I feel like Nick Cannon came into the game at a time where, because Nick Cannon became the youngest chairman of Nickelodeon. You get what I'm saying? Like, he came in at a time where certain doors were never open and certain pathways weren't common, and he was knocking doors down. Like, I don't think Nick Cannon gets enough credit for the spaces he has created and the doors that he's opened, right? So in one respect, I can see why he went and did the things that he did, because that still was a huge accomplishment. That was like knocking the door down. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wouldn't have been able to have a Wild 'N Out or create a Halo Awards or do all these things without the alliances that he built through partnering with these companies and being talent. And I think he leveraged his talent to create pathways as an entrepreneur, the same way I have with writing and other things. You can use that as a pathway
that personal
to
brand
get into other spaces.
That personal brand.
So I think he's done that successfully. So when it comes to him being vertically integrated, I feel like by the time he really got to a place where that made a lot of sense, he was already super immersed in being the talent and being the one who, and I say this lightly, but the way you said dependency, right? Like, he became too dependent on too many things already. So like his enterprise was attached to MTV, attached to Nickelodeon, attached to all these places. So he would have to give all of that up or completely do a boss move and restructure everything to be able to vertically integrate himself, because it was too attached.
Because honestly, for me, as an insight that I see, is just that I think that should be the mindset of all content creators now, is being vertically integrated, because we can't keep going into their platforms and they have the control to silence us whenever they want. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to say if Nick Cannon was wrong or right. I'm not here to, but what I'm saying is, I don't like that if somebody doesn't agree with you, they can snatch your platform from you. You know what I'm saying?
But the same token I would say though is, like, at a certain point, you realize that that's always the case. Like, if you don't own it, it does not matter. That can happen to you at any juncture. And it don't matter how successful you are. It don't matter how much you've brought to said platform or what you've done. Like, at the end of the day, every business relationship in that respect is an exchange value. And that can be cut. So even with Nick Cannon, is like, he knew that was possible. And that's why you always need to be building your own while you're doing these other things, so that even when something like that happens, it doesn't set you back, or it doesn't stop what you're ultimately trying to build. It's changing the dynamic of your partnerships, like of your relationships, to where regardless of what they do, it's stopping what you're out there trying to create. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like, yes, every creator now especially should be thinking being vertically integrated. And for those who don't understand that, it's owning the entire chain of commerce from creation to distribution. So like, I'm the ideator, I'm the strategist, I'm the creator, I'm the distributor, you know what I'm saying, etc.
Just like Jay-Z.
Yeah, just like Jay did, just like Nip did, you know what I'm saying? Long live Nipsey Hussle, just like he did. And it's possible. This goes back to what we first talked about when we said, like, yo, people starting their own leagues, they're starting their own businesses. It's like, we can definitely do it, but you have to you have to see the value in the long term and think about what's really important to you. Like, what is really important to you? And for some people, it's not being the owner. Like, it's not being vertically. That's just not what they care about. They care about getting as much bread as they can, and like, nothing wrong with that. But for people who are really thinking about the collective, again, like if you're thinking about what am I doing that's going to help all of us to advance our agenda for the next however years that's after I'm gone, then that's something that, you know, everybody I feel like should be thinking about. And it should be in the business model you think to develop. It should be like, okay, the greatest example is how in hip hop they monetize their lifestyle. That's the greatest example. You say, yo, if it's alcohol that I'm drinking, it's mine. If it's clothes, it's mine. If it's the club, it's my club. So it's like, if you inventory of that, what are the things that you can create an ecosystem around that you own and operate, and try to, you know, build it from there. Well,
we can end on that. I truly do appreciate you for doing my show. I know,
absolutely, man. All love.
I truly appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can hit me on Instagram, Twitter, at All Things Mitch. You can also go to IQ-Labs.
That's your new company you're running now, right?
Yeah.
I know we showed on time, but like, we can maybe another time in the future we can do this again, so we can talk more about like your backstory and your new company that you got going on. You get what I'm saying? So I sure do appreciate it. And
it's vertically integrated. It is vertically integrated.
Yeah, I respect that for sure. But thank you so much, Julian. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man. Take care.
All right, man.
All right, brother.